Welcome to your one of most important changes in your life. In this program, you will learn how to lose weight and get in shape, build your self-you-own menu, get started and on what program you need to start, make you your own training plan, get a mindset that's going to help you on your journey and life in general, make yourself a program that will fit you the best possible way. Make smoothies with a low calorie value and a high value of protein. You will learn to prepare yourself dishes with a low caloric value and rich in protein. You will learn all the important things you should know in the fitness world, so you will no longer have to pay hundreds of dollars to fitness instructors. You will be finally depend only on yourself in the world of training. First of all, choosing the right training program depends on various factors, including your goals, fitness level, preferences, and any potential health considerations. Set clear goals. Determine what you want to achieve through your training. Do you want to build muscle, lose weight, increase endurance, get shredded, or something else? Having clear goals will guide your program selection. Assess your fitness level. Be honest with yourself about your current fitness level. If you're a beginner, it's advisable to start with a program designed for beginners. If you're more experienced, you might be able to handle more advanced workouts. Start slowly. Regardless of your fitness level, it's wise to start slowly, especially if you're new to exercise. Gradually increase the intensity and duration of your workouts to avoid injury and burnout. Listen to your body. Pay attention to how your body responds to the training program. If you're constantly fatigued, experiencing pain, or not seeing progress, it might be time to reassess and make adjustments. Health considerations. If you have any pre-existing health conditions or injuries, it's crucial to choose a program that accommodates your needs and won't exacerbate your condition. Consulting with a healthcare professional about the programs can be beneficial in such cases. It is important for me to say that this information is going to shatter many myths for you, and I am going to reveal to you the hard truth that in many places they do not want you to know, and maybe inside you do not want to know either. I hope you will pass this information on and prevent people from working hard and investing themselves, only to find out that they are not getting closer to their goal, but even further away from it. So, weight loss? Toning? You decide. So assuming that you're reading the information and you don't have much knowledge regarding nutrition, fitness, training, it is likely that your goals will be formulated something like this. I want to lose weight. I want six-pack. I want a beautiful ass. I want slim, shapely legs. I want bigger hands. I want to get rid of my chubby belly. I want to get rid of my side fats. There are many other ways that people describe their goals, and since you have never investigated in depth how these goals can really be achieved, it is very easy to fall for all kinds of tempting publications with models or innovative diets that offer a new, easy way and all kinds of tricks. And what you can do in our reality today, it is very easy to sell bullshit packaged in a sexy wrapper. Well, then what's the secret? Training, nutrition, sleep. So a great genius after all this is obvious, isn't it? Obviously, you must train properly, and you must eat properly, and you must sleep properly. But the question is, what is properly? Who decides? Will every training we do serve our purpose? And if we train, does that mean we can eat everything? If not, then how much? Don't worry, we'll go through each component later. First of all, let's start by explaining once and for all what the difference between toning and losing weight is. Weight loss refers to net weight loss. I mean, you got on the scale, you saw a certain number, and you want it to go down. For you, if the number goes down, you are making progress. We all know such people who say, I lost 2 kilograms. I lost 50 kilograms in 6 months. I want to lose 5 kilograms by the summer. So please, ask yourself, and be honest, what does it mean to lose 2 kilograms? Can you explain to yourself? Where does it come from? Why did it come down? Probably not, and that's why the only tool you use is the scale itself, which tells you if the number has changed or not. Toning. refers to a decrease in fat percentage while maintaining maximum muscle mass. I mean, there is still monitoring of our weight, and later we will also talk about what is an optimal and correct loss, but our concentration in toning is to lose fat and keep our muscle. For the girls who are already thinking and saying, "What do I care about muscles? I don't want to be masculine and muscular," think about it for a moment. Whether you admit it or not, right now you have muscles all over your body. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to get out of bed, walk, move your arms, work, and bury your head in your iPhone. So here is a new message. When you look at toned girls on the internet, TV and magazines, and their bodies look amazing, it's only because they have muscles. I mean, the definition of a shapely girl is like this: has muscle mass and a low fat percentage. I know it's a little hard to shake off all the myths and bullshit that we fed ourselves, but if you want to look toned and sexy, you must maintain the muscle you have. The other reason you want to stay with muscle mass is to prevent osteoporosis. Studies show that women with low muscle mass increase the chance of getting osteoporosis because the less weight, muscle, there is on the bones, the faster they weaken and lose their density. And I'm sure we all know the guy or girl who lost a lot of weight, but for some reason their body still doesn't look good. They have a lot of slimming, excess skin, and are relatively thin all over the body, but belly fat still remains. The biggest reason for excess skin is because there was no maintenance of muscle mass. In most cases, people will lose a lot of weight, lose a lot of muscle, even though they didn't have much to begin with, and be left with excess fat rather than skin. And because people are not aware, they will call it excess skin. Of course, in cases of overweight and obesity, the chance of excess skin is higher. All this is unnecessary, especially since muscle is hard to build and very easy to destroy. Bottom line, if a person chooses to lose weight and not get into shape, they will look about the same as they do now, only smaller. Summary: weight loss. No consideration of what is lost, loss of muscle mass and fat together. Not the result we wanted. Toning, fat loss while maintaining muscle mass. The result we wanted, a sexy and shaped body. Low carb diet. Let's talk about the advanced fitness program. Here is the rule. If your goal is to lose fat and preserve as much muscle mass as possible, start with normal toning. The only trainees I would recommend doing this guide are trainees who did regular toning, saw results, got down to a low fat percentage, do everything right in terms of training, nutrition, and sleep, and have trouble losing more fat percentages. Trainees who have already done toning in the past, plus have a relatively low fat percentage of 12% or less. The low-carb plan is a tool to confuse the body in a situation where the body has already gotten used to the normal toning, and now we need to raise a level. There is no other reason to start a low-carb program. It's not fun. It is very difficult. If you are in studies, exams, army, work, in a relationship, it will affect you and make life difficult for you. A big preoccupation with food and the need to avoid carbohydrates that hide for us in cheeses, milk, etc. It takes time to get used to the fact that your body produces energy from fats and not from carbohydrates, so the first weeks will be tiring and you will want to eat the wall. This is a difficult program that requires your time, energy, and investment. So now you understand that the low-carb plan is for serious people only, and that's exactly the name of the program. This is not a plan for the average guy who wants to look good for the summer and lose some fat. So if you are over 15% fat and you ask me if you can do the low-carb plan, you are shooting yourself in the knee. There is no shortcuts where you can skip an entire level and get a magic diet or vibrating device to get a six-pack. All those people with the beautiful bodies, the six-pack and the big-shaped muscles went through hell that included mass periods and toning periods one after the other in order to reach the same result that we currently consider a goal body. Why a low-carb diet? What is so good about a low-carb diet and why choose it? First, a little background. A low-carbohydrate diet is a diet which we limit the amount of carbohydrates. 50, 100 grams of carbohydrates per day, and increase the amount of protein and fat in order to reach the desired nutritional values. A low-carb diet is more effective in preventing damage to muscle mass and losing stubborn fat. Each of us has a place where fat accumulates and is difficult to get rid of. A low-carb diet prevents damage to muscle mass on several levels. 1. Decreased insulin sensitivity. The lower the insulin sensitivity, the higher the amount of glucose, carbohydrates, needed to regulate blood glucose levels. What causes a decrease in insulin sensitivity are the free fatty acids in the blood, and the more they are, the more their metabolism is increased, and this causes a decrease in the utilization of glucose for energy production, and you use up glycogen by 50%. It is not so important to understand this. What is important to understand is that low-carbohydrate diets cause large fat mobilization and therefore also a decrease in insulin sensitivity. Since the body's main source of self-production of glucose is amino acids obtained from muscle breakdown, we reduce muscle breakdown because we reduce glucose requirements to a minimum. 2. Increase in growth hormone levels. A prolonged caloric deficit encourages the secretion of growth hormone. There will not be a serious secretion in 7 days, but it was discovered that there is an almost 2 times increase in the hormone IGF-1, which is a hormone that is responsible for many of the processes of growth hormone, so that the anabolic effect of the body increases almost no change in growth hormone. 3. Adrenaline. Low blood glucose levels stimulate the release of adrenaline. Adrenaline is one of the factors that affect muscle mass. It has been shown in a study that adrenaline directly prevents muscle breakdown. 4. Dietary protein. Low-carb diets usually contain large amounts of protein. There is evidence that high protein intake causes high protein synthesis, anabolism, by increasing the availability of amino acids in the blood. During weight loss, high protein intake helps preserve muscle breakdown. These benefits have almost no importance in high fat percentages. Every person has a fat percentage that they can reach easily without losing much muscle mass. But the problem starts when you want to drop below the same percentage of fat, and usually it is very difficult and the loss of muscle increases. When you are in this situation, these benefits will help you more. When can you eat a non-low-carb menu? With high fat percentages, 15+, you can eat in a negative caloric balance and enter a large deficit, even of 1,000 calories, with minimal loss of muscle mass. When you reach lower fat percentages, 12-15, you should reduce the deficit until it reaches about 500. At about 12%, the body enters the set point mode. The set point is a point where most of the fat left for the body to burn is stubborn fat. Going below this point has the greatest muscle loss, and only at this point I recommend you use the program. If you are above, read the plan for normal toning, the practice, how to actually be on a low-carb diet. So first of all, a carbohydrate diet is a type of cycle. The diet period contains 2 periods. 1. Low-carb period. 2. Carbohydrate loading period. The low-carb period is the period when you eat about 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. The carbohydrate loading period is a period in which you eat a very large amount of carbohydrates and enter a positive caloric balance. With high fat percentages, over 15, it is possible to lose weight without carbohydrate loading in normal toning. Between 12 and 15% fat, it is advisable to load once every 10 days. Between 9 and 12% fat, once every 7 days. You have to do some math. 1. You must calculate the mass of fat in kilograms. For this, you will first need to know your fat percentage, or at least approximately, and then use the above formula. Fat percentage multiplied by body weight divided by 100. How do you check body fat percentage? Fat measurement methods. 1. Chart. Checking the percentage of fat according to weight/height/age is a chart, web calculator, which relies on statistics and cannot reflect the percentage of fat in the human body, but rather give a general assessment to an average person of a certain weight. For us as exercisers, such a table is not an index, and likewise cannot show us changes in fat percentage. 2. Caliper. Measuring fat percentage with a caliper is not accurate and varies from measurement to measurement with the same trainer, also an experienced measurer, and also varies from one trainer to another since the testing place is not always the same and the pinch is not always similar. Therefore, it is recommended for trainers to measure with a caliper for beginner trainers in order to start at the point attribution, after which it is expected to improve. As mentioned, it doesn't always work. In addition, the test points were determined according to statistics of the concentration of fats in the human body and also a chart calculation from which the results of the percentage of fat are obtained. 3. Electric device. The electrical devices that check body fat percentages are not accurate because they are affected by the concentration of fluids in the body, but they can be used as a good reference point. The meaning is, for example, that the fat tests will always be performed in the morning before training or eating, reasonable assuming that the concentration of fluids in the body will be similar in most cases. The result will not reflect the correct percentage of fat in the body, but will show an improvement or worsening from the previous test. To summarize the topic of fat measurement, it is important to remember that looking in the mirror does not always reflect fat percentages. Measuring laps is also not reflective. A caliper device is unreliable and suitable for beginners. Electrical devices are not accurate, but can show improvement, worsening. My recommendation is to use what is available. Not everyone has the tools to test oneself regularly with each and every device, and take the results with the understanding that they are not always correct and reflect reality. 2. You must calculate the amount of calories you burn in a normal day. To calculate this, use the BMR calculator and multiply the result by 1.2 or 1.4 depending on how active you are. 3. You need to calculate your lean body mass. Lean body mass is the body mass without the fat, and for this, you need to subtract from your body weight the fat mass that you calculated by 1. What are the values we should eat in a low-carb diet? During the low-carb period, calories. Subtract 68 calories for every kilogram of fat in your body from the total calories you burn per day. Carbohydrates, 4 calories, 50, 100 grams of carbohydrates per day. Protein, 4 calories, about 2.5, 3 grams of protein per kilogram of lean body mass. Fat, 1 gram of fat is about 9 calories. The amount of fat should supplement your menu for the amount of calories you need. For example, if you lack 900 calories, in order to reach the required amount of calories, you must add 100 grams of fat to the menu. During the carbohydrate loading period, calories, there is no fixed amount, depending on the values of the protein, carbohydrates, and fat. Carbohydrates, about 12 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of lean body mass. Protein, about 1.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Fat, it is better to consume as little fat as possible, only the fat that comes from protein and carbohydrate sources. Example for calculation. My weight is 80 kilograms. My body fat percentage is 14%. Then 80 multiply 0.14 equal 11.2. 11.2 is my fat mass in kilograms. And the amount of calories I burn per day is 1,805. 1,805 multiplied by 1.2 equal 2,166. 2,166 is the amount of calories I burn on a resting normal day. You need to calculate your lean body mass. Lean body mass is the body mass without the fat, and for this you need to subtract from your body weight the fat mass that you calculated. For example, 80 minus 11.2 equals 69.2. Calories. I weigh 80 and my BMR is 2,166, So the calculation is going to be like this. 2,166 minus 761 equal 1,405. 1,405 is my daily calorie intake. A gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories, so 50 grams equal 200 calories. A gram of protein is 4 calories, so 69.2 lean body mass multiplied by 3 is equal 210 equal 842 calories. A gram of fat is 9 calories, so 842 plus 200 equal 1,042. 1,405 minus 1,042 equal 360. 40 grams of fat multiplied by 9 equal 360. Total, 842 plus 200 plus 360 equal 1,402. Low carb menu, for example, only. Breakfast, omelette, 150 grams, about 2-3 eggs, 1 medium cucumber. Snack, 10 o'clock, 2 slices whole wheat bread, yellow cheese, 17%, 4 slices. Lunch, boiled chicken breast, 200 grams. Vegetable salad, 200 grams. Yogurt 0%, 100 grams. Meal after training, 1 banana. Dinner, tuna in water, 200 grams. Final values, total calories, 1422 calories. Total protein, 168.2 grams. Total fat, 49.7 grams. Total carbohydrates, 74.7 grams. Total cholesterol, 755.6 milligrams. Total dietary fiber, 7.8 grams. On the loading day, simply eat a lot of carbohydrates without worrying about the caloric balance. You mess up the metabolism like that, and this day can only be good. Well, now that we know what toning actually is, what does weight loss mean? And what is low-carb toning? We're going to talk about the 3 main nutrients: protein, carbohydrate, and fat. What is the difference between the different types of carbohydrates? What is the difference between the different types of fat and protein? Can we eat all types of protein, carbohydrate, and fat? If not, then why? We will learn how to make a menu for ourselves and how to follow it easily. We will learn about several different training programs, and we will learn how to prepare for ourselves a training program that will suit us and our goals. Protein. Almost every exerciser, whether he is a beginner or a veteran, whether he is engaged in aerobics, riding, running, swimming, or works out in the gym, hears many conversations and comments from all sides about different types of protein, their advantages, disadvantages, their eating times, their biological value, and many other statements, some true and some not true about eating protein. Protein, chemical structure and biological value. Protein is one of the 3 main nutrients, macronutrients, that exist in nature. The building blocks, those that make up the protein, are called amino acids, and there are over 300 of them in nature. Of these, only 20 have a role in building proteins found inside the human body. The 20 amino acids that are active in the human body are divided into 3 main types: 8 essential amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, valine, the 3 BCAAs, lysine, methionine, phenylalanine, tryptophan, and threonine. The body cannot produce them on its own, so they must be obtained from food supplements. 2 semi-essential amino acids, histidine and glutamine. In some situations, a lack of them in the body can be caused. Therefore, those people who are in these situations must consume them from food or a supplement. Common situations are physical activity, which causes increased catabolism of muscle, various diseases, growth, children and youth, and rehabilitation from injuries. 10 non-essential amino acids, arginine, alanine, asparagine, aspartic acid, cysteine, proline, glutamic acid, glycine, serine, and tyrosine. The body produces them by itself from the essential amino acids and carbohydrates, so you don't have to get them from food. What is the function of the protein? The proteins are responsible for building muscle cells. The proteins help build tissues in the body. assist in the transfer of substances such as foods and oxygen into and out of cells, are used as antibodies in the immune system. There are hormones that are actually proteins and transmit the messages between the cells. Biological value of proteins. The concept of biological value of protein is actually a measure of the efficiency of the absorption and use of the protein we eat by our body. The biological value is measured in percentages, and the higher the value, the more efficiently our body utilizes the protein source. Biological value of different proteins: whey, 104%, egg, 100%, milk and its products, 80–90%, meat and fish, 80%, soy, 74%. Whey protein. A natural protein that makes up about 20% of the total protein in cow's milk. The casein protein makes up the other 80%. Whey protein is soluble in water and has the highest biological value that exists in nature, 104%. There is no disagreement about the health benefits of whey protein. Since whey protein is water-soluble, it has the advantage of being quickly absorbed by the body and rapidly metabolized. It is not as difficult to digest as casein and soy protein, so it is also used as a supplement for babies, people after bariatric surgery, adults, or anyone who has any digestive problems. Production process. Whey protein is filtered from the milk in the cheese production process in factories when the casein protein, that is also extracted from the milk, crystallizes and creates the cheese for us. In the past, whey protein was considered a byproduct, and farmers used it to fertilize the land. But over the years, when they began to investigate the composition of the whey protein and discovered its properties, it suddenly became clear that it has superiority over the casein protein in certain areas, and nutritional supplements began to be produced from it. Today, there are companies that work specifically to produce the whey protein, and the protein is not obtained as a byproduct of the cheese production. The process is aimed at the production of whey protein from the stage of raising the cow to the production line in the factory. For example, the Syntrax company that uses Promina protein, a brand of protein at the highest production level sold to hospitals in the USA. Whey protein is considered the highest quality protein that exists in nature for several reasons. Its excellent solubility in water causes its rapid and optimal absorption in the body, and it does not cause digestive difficulties. The amino acid profile, where it is the best and perfectly suited to our skeletal muscles, the protein contains all the essential amino acids. Whey protein is non-allergenic, meaning it does not cause allergies following its consumption. It has a large amount of growth factors and essential peptides. It is fuel for the immune system and accelerates its activity. Whey protein contains the highest concentration of short-branched chain amino acids, BCAA, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, among all proteins. Unlike the other amino acids, BCAA are oxidized directly in the skeletal muscles and contribute directly to physical activity and the synthesis of new proteins in the muscle. Whey protein also contains a 4 times higher concentration of the amino acid cysteine, which has a key role in the metabolism of proteins in the body, which creates greater muscle mass and changes body composition. Nutritional sources. Whey protein is found in low doses in cow's milk and dairy products, mainly yogurts. Cheeses contain a very small amount of whey due to their production process. Supplements. Today, there are supplements that contain over 90% whey protein in powder, a powder that contains less than 90% whey protein, called in the professional language whey protein concentrate. A powder that contains over 90% whey protein is called whey protein isolate, or WPIs for short, and is a high-quality protein low in lactose. Whey protein isolate usually contains 0% carbohydrate and 0% fat, and the only reason that protein isolate cannot reach 100% protein is that it must contain some moisture, water, and minerals such as calcium and magnesium. Another advantage of the whey protein due to its solubility in water is that it melts and mixes exceptionally well in food or drink. It can be added to almost anything without changing the texture of the food. Since it is very difficult to obtain whey protein freely in food, in this particular case, we rely on the dietary supplements. Casein. As mentioned, the casein protein makes up about 80% of the total protein in cow's milk. In the cheese-making process, it is isolated from the milk, crystallizes, and creates the texture of the cheese. Therefore, dairy products such as cheeses contain a high amount of casein. Because of its structure, the casein protein is absorbed in the digestive tract slowly over 6, 7 hours, and therefore releases amino acids into the blood in a delay mechanism. The protein is almost insoluble in water and forms a structure called micelles, a kind of hydrophobic little spheres, so it takes our enzymes a long time to break it down. Casein has been proven in studies to be the best anti-catabolic protein of all proteins. That is, the casein protein keeps our muscles from breaking down during the day and night. Nutritional sources, as mentioned, casein makes up most of the protein in cow's milk and various cheeses. Therefore, casein can be obtained freely in food. This is in contrast to whey protein, which is difficult to obtain in food naturally, and therefore we rely mainly on food supplements. Average cheese, white or cottage cheese, 3%, 5%, contains over 20 grams of casein per 250 milliliters box. Additives. Casein comes in 3 common forms within food additives, a combination of proteins or pure casein, calcium casein, calcium caseinate, the lowest form that is added to food supplements. The main problem is in its absorption because it is not the natural form of casein, and therefore our enzymes have difficulty breaking down this chemical structure. Try to avoid a supplement that contains casein in this form. Micellar casein. Casein is filtered in its natural form from milk, in the form of micelles, and is therefore recognized by our enzymes and absorbed better in the digestive tract. Milk protein isolate, the most natural and advanced form. Here too, the casein is preserved in its original form and is effectively absorbed in the digestive system. Milk protein isolate also contains some whey protein. The main advantage of using supplements that contain casein as a substitute for dairy products is the relatively low fat concentration. It is mainly recommended for those who are limited in fat consumption in their diet or who are looking for a tasty substitute for cheese. Psychological effect. Albumin, egg protein. Albumin is a protein with 100% biological value. In the past, before the discovery of the benefits of whey protein, albumin was considered the most effective protein for the human body and therefore received the highest score in the biological value index. Like whey protein, albumin is also soluble in water, but to a lesser extent. Therefore, its absorption speed in the digestive tract is slower than whey protein, but faster than casein protein. The digestion and absorption time of a whole egg is around 45–60 minutes. The egg protein contains important ingredients that perfectly support the building and maintenance of muscle. It has a balanced amino acid profile and contains all 8 essential amino acids for the body. In addition, the egg protein contains certain growth factors and many other important nutrients in order to support muscle building. Nutritional sources: eggs. Additives. The situations of using a supplement containing only egg protein are rare. The common use of a supplement that contains egg protein is a powder that increases the mass or a combination of proteins, which we will talk about later. Since the recommendations for eating eggs are around 1–2 whole eggs per day, those who want to get more egg protein in their menu are required to separate the yolk and eat only the white. Many athletes avoid this both due to the financial cost, you have to throw away the yellow part, and due to the unnecessary fuss. Therefore, using a supplement that contains egg protein has an advantage in terms of ease of use and can benefit those who limit cholesterol in their diet. Protein synthesis. Usually, when it comes to a supplement that contains a protein combination, it means a combination of whey protein plus egg protein plus casein protein. There is a physiological logic behind the use of protein combination. Each type of protein covers up the shortcomings of the other and enhances the overall anabolic effect. The different absorption times of each protein cause the flow of amino acids into the blood for several hours and not in a limited time frame when we use one type of protein. For example, the main problem with whey protein is that it works in a very short time frame, about an hour to an hour and a half, and does not help protect against the breakdown of muscle tissue throughout the rest of the day. This is where the casein protein comes into play. Proven in studies to be the best anti-catabolic, prevents breakdown protein that exists. It releases amino acids into the bloodstream for 6-7 hours. The egg protein contains growth factors, vitamins and minerals that are not present in the other two proteins and therefore supports muscle building. The absorption time of the egg protein covers the difference between the absorption time of whey protein and the absorption time of casein. Although each of these proteins is essential on its own and has its own advantages, a combination of all types of protein will give the body a greater effect and will result in maximum utilization of the profit we receive from using a nutritional supplement containing protein. Protein deficiency. Prolonged lack of protein may cause damage to the development and growth process in children and teenagers, may impair the restoration of tissues and muscles, lead to a drop in body temperature, damage our immune system, and weaken it, cause the body to develop resistance to the insulin hormone responsible for introducing sugar into the cells, damage the appearance and elasticity of the skin, for fatigue, hair loss, and more. The safety of using protein supplements and what happens in the case of too much protein in a meal. I hear so much crap and prejudice on this subject, so I would like to clear something up a little. For this purpose, we will use simple math. According to the recommendations that are prevalent in the world today, recommendations that come from large bodies that deal with sports nutrition, it is about a daily protein consumption of around 1.5–2.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight for a person who trains in the aerobic and anaerobic fields, and there are those who talk about even more. In a simple calculation, a person who weighs 70 kilograms will consume around 150 grams of protein per day. An average protein supplement, whether it's whey protein, protein blend, or bulking powder, contains 25 grams of protein per serving, just like an average can of cottage cheese or tuna. Those that are richer in protein can reach around 30 grams of protein per serving, which means that a person weighing 70 kilograms who uses a protein supplement twice a day, 50 grams of protein in total, needs to supplement another 100 grams of protein based on his diet. There are also studies that show that protein consumption of 4 grams per kilogram of body weight is safe to use and does not create a burden on the kidneys or liver. The conclusion: a protein supplement does not create a burden on the kidneys or the liver, and for the majority of the training population, it does not fill half of the recommended daily protein quota. And what happens in the situation of too much protein in the meal? Most of you will probably say that the excess will turn into fat. You are wrong. Let's start by saying that the facts indicate that our body knows how to adapt to the amount of protein we consume. If you start eating 30 and 40 and even 100 grams of protein at each meal, your body will begin to use more protein for its physiological needs. This will happen after a few days. The amino acids, which, as mentioned, are the building blocks of protein, are metabolized mainly in the liver and skeletal muscles. There are several processes that the amino acids can go through, and the likelihood of triglyceride formation is very low. It is true that our body does not know how to store amino acids, so most of the excess amino acids will be oxidized for the purpose of creating energy or will turn into glucose or ketone bodies. Therefore, when the consumption of protein increases, the rate of their oxidation and the rate of their conversion to glucose or ketone bodies will also increase, all according to the body's requirements. In theory, in order for amino acids to turn into fats, they must first turn into glucose. Then the glucose has to turn into fatty acids in a process called de novo lipogenesis. In order for this to happen, we need to eat carbohydrates in an amount over 100% of what our body needs, and even then, this will only happen when the glycogen stores are full. For an average person, this is a consumption of 900 grams carb per day for several days in a row. In conclusion, the process of turning protein into fat is simply not realistic. Too many variables have to occur at the same time, and the energy expenditure of the whole process is not worthwhile for the body. Carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are one of the 3 main nutrients in food and have an essential role in everything related to the supply of energy for the body's activity in general and in the context of physical activity in particular. Their main functions in the body include building, energy for muscle activity, for heating the body, and of course for the brain and nervous system. What types of carbohydrates are there? Carbohydrates are chains of sugar molecules, and they are divided into 2 groups, simple and complex. Simple carbohydrates, glucose, sugar. They have 1 or 2 sugar molecules, so they are smaller and easier to digest. The rate of passage of carbohydrates from the intestine to the bloodstream is very fast. Absorption can begin very close to the time of eating and up to 30 minutes after it ends. Includes mainly monosaccharides and disaccharides. The advantage of simple carbohydrates is that they are able to provide energy immediately in times of shortage, without much energy investment. The disadvantage is a sharp increase in the concentration of glucose in the blood and a sharp decrease in it, which may appear immediately afterwards. This situation will cause damage to the performance of the physical effort over time and will cause early fatigue. Examples of simple carbohydrates: white sugar, white flour and its products, chocolate, sweets, candies, ice cream, chewing gum, sweetened juices, including filtered natural juice, and more. Complex carbohydrates, dietary fiber, starch. They are sort of strings of 3 or more sugar molecules and include starches and fibers, but only the starches are digested. Slow absorption from the digestive system into the bloodstream. Includes long chains of glucose, some of which are defined as dietary fiber. The dietary fibers are carbohydrates connected by bonds that the enzymes of the digestive system cannot break down. The dietary fibers create a mechanical barrier in the intestine and make it difficult for the enzymes to break down the carbohydrates. By doing so, they inhibit the absorption of carbohydrates in the intestinal wall. In addition, the stomach puts a lot of effort into breaking down the fibers, so the motility of the intestine increases. The energy release in the digestion of food increases, you burn more calories, and the final time in which the carbohydrates pass into the bloodstream will be longer. Examples of complex carbohydrates: oats, granola bars, wholemeal rice, wholemeal pasta, chickpeas, peas, beans, lentils, fiber-enriched or wholemeal cereals, whole wheat bread, bran, fruits and vegetables, mainly in their skins and stems. In general, it is important to eat as many complex carbohydrates with dietary fiber as possible. These will provide correct and controlled levels of energy and a feeling of satiety. In addition, during a diet, the consumption of simple carbohydrates, which are usually tastier and sweeter, should be minimized. Complex carbohydrates that are digested more slowly are usually unprocessed and come from nature. They are not created with the help of processing processes by the food manufacturers. They are rich in nutrients, dietary fiber, and cause a relatively slow rise in blood sugar levels and little release of insulin. These carbohydrates should be the first choice as a source of energy in the body and even for growth processes. Carbohydrates play an important role in everything related to physical activity. Carbohydrates are the body's source of energy, and proper consumption of carbohydrates will greatly help success in any type of physical activity. Eating carbohydrates before training, an hour and a half to 2 hours before, is essential for maintaining correct and stable levels of glucose, thanks to which a drop in energy in the middle of training will be avoided, which could cause it to stop. After training, it is also important to consume carbohydrates, as they are critical for the body's recovery from the effort. People who engage in physical activity, as mentioned, should consume complex carbohydrates. When you eat carbohydrates, the body responds by releasing the hormone insulin. Insulin helps fuel exercise by moving glucose, the basic energy unit, into the muscles. The insulin also helps in pushing the proteins into the muscle cells, which leads to their strengthening and enlargement. The disadvantage of excessive consumption of simple carbohydrates is excessive release of insulin that inhibits the conversion of excess fat into energy. The solution is to make sure to consume natural carbohydrates and make sure to eat them throughout the day. In this way, a controlled amount of insulin will be released into the blood, which helps control fat levels in the body. How many carbs should I eat a day? There is no clear definition of what exactly how many carbohydrates should be eaten per day, and what is defined as low for one person may not be low for another. An individual's optimal carbohydrate intake depends on age, gender, body composition, activity levels, personal preference, food culture, and current metabolic health. Physically active people who have more muscle mass can eat much more carbohydrates than people who are sedentary most of the time. This applies mainly to those who do a lot of high-intensity anaerobic work, such as lifting weights or running short distances. Metabolic health is also a very important factor. When people get the metabolic syndrome, become obese, or have type 2 diabetes, the rules change. People who fall into this category cannot eat the same amount of carbohydrates as healthy people. Some scientists even refer to these problems as carbohydrate intolerance. The FDA's 2020 to 2025 dietary guidelines recommend consuming 45 to 65% of your daily calories as carbohydrates. For example, on a 2,000 calorie diet, you need between 225 and 325 grams of carbohydrates per day. The minimum recommended amount of carbohydrates per day, in accordance with these guidelines, is 130 grams, about 8 or 9 carbohydrate servings of 15 grams per day. Are the carbohydrates necessary? Contrary to several people who try to prove otherwise but have not yet succeeded, physiologically, there is no need for carbohydrates, even though there is a recommended daily allowance for health, RDA, recommended dietary allowances. To understand why carbohydrates are not necessary in the daily diet, we need to understand which nutrients are essential and which are not. The definition of essential nutrients is divided into two. 1. Every nutrient essential for the survival of the human body. 2. Any nutrient that cannot be produced by the human body. Quote from the book, The Rapid Fat Loss, PSMF. Carbohydrates are not a nutritious or essential nutrient for our bodies because the body can produce glucose on a daily basis from other sources in sufficient quantities to power organs such as the brain or different tissues and cells that need it. On the other hand, we will have to point out that the body cannot produce enough glucose for intense activity such as sprints or weight training. So carbohydrates will have to be part of the daily diet of those individuals who engage in these activities. In conclusion, from the point of view of the body's survival and normal daily activity, there is no need for carbohydrates at all. The body can obtain what it needs from other sources. Which sources? Continue reading. From what other sources does the glucose required for our body come? When we do not eat carbohydrates at all, the body still has a requirement for some glucose, although this requirement decreases over time. Therefore, the body is required to look for alternative sources of glucose production. The body finds its requirement in lactic acid from an acid called pyruvate, produced by glucose metabolism, from glycerol, from fat metabolism, and amino acids, which can be problematic because the amino acids have to come from somewhere. Now, if in a given situation we are in a complete fast and do not consume food for an extended period of time, The amino acids will often be released from the muscle tissues. The body will also release proteins from the liver. In breaking down the muscle tissues, which will give us amino acids, for energy, in our case glucose, 2 amino acids will be released, which are important to us mainly, alanine and glutamine, which can turn into glucose in the liver. This process is called by its cumbersome name gluconeogenesis, meaning a new creation of glucose. At the beginning of starvation or prolonged fasting, a lot of protein breakdown will occur and will be gradually moderated by commands from the brain, which will replace these proteins with ketone bodies for fuel, which will reduce the body's requirements for glucose, meaning less protein will have to be broken down to create glucose. Despite the entire process mentioned before, usually when we are in a state of starvation for a long time and the reserves in the body begin to be depleted, a situation arises that the body will have to use protein to create glucose, and we cannot avoid this unless we eat. Over long periods of time, protein breakdown turns from harmful to fatal, muscle breakdown, especially when people become extremely lean and protein breakdown in their bodies increases. We have to thank our liver that in any case, half of the consumed amino acids pass through it in the process of decomposition, which can give us the advantage of producing glucose by the liver before breaking down the protein from the muscle. Now let's take the point of view of a person who is on a diet and not in starvation or prolonged fasting. Everything that has been mentioned so far is one of the reasons why protein consumption is increased during the weight loss process. Another reason for increasing the amount of protein during a process of weight loss, toning, lowering the percentage of fat, is that our liver will use more of the protein we consume to create glucose, and to be sure that it will also use the protein for equally important things, such as protein synthesis in the skeletal muscles. According to all these things, it can be understood that carbohydrates are still not necessary in diets where the protein intake is sufficient and relatively high. As an example, the PSMF diet, which is based on 0 grams of carbohydrates and mainly on essential nutritional ingredients such as quality protein and essential fatty acids to create a large caloric deficit and maximum fat loss for a given day. The good, the bad, and the ugly. All types of fat is an organic molecule and an essential component of the body. It consists of glycerin and fatty acids, where the fatty acids are a major part of the fat molecule. Fat plays many important roles for the functioning of the body's systems. It forms the basis for the creation of many hormones, protects the body's cells, skin, and internal organs, provides energy to the body, helps the immune system, and is responsible for the absorption of essential vitamins in the body, such as vitamin A, vitamin B, vitamin E, and vitamin K. However, fats are also rich in calories, and in high consumption may lead to overweight and obesity and harm health. The body cannot function properly without fatty acids, so it is important to include foods containing fatty acids in the diet. However, there are types of fat that are significantly harmful to the body. One must know how to distinguish between harmful fat and healthy fat. Unsaturated fat, the good. An unsaturated fatty acid is not high in hydrogen, and its state of accumulation is usually liquid at room temperature. Therefore, it does not accumulate in the body, but is absorbed and has a positive effect on the body's systems. Unsaturated fat is divided into 2 types, monounsaturated fat and polyunsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fat helps reduce the level of bad cholesterol in the body and thus helps the health of the heart and blood vessels. It is found in fish and plant foods such as olive oil, peanuts, almonds, avocados, flax seeds, and nuts. Polyunsaturated fat increases the levels of good cholesterol in the body and reduces the levels of bad cholesterol and helps burn fats efficiently in the blood. Omega-3 and omega-6 are subgroups of polyunsaturated fatty acids. These are essential fatty acids because the body is not able to produce them, so foods containing them must be consumed. These fatty acids improve blood circulation, help with depression, and lower the risk of cardiovascular diseases. Omega-3 and omega-6 can be found in foods such as sesame seeds, sunflower, corn, walnuts, flax seeds, sardines, salmon, anchovies, and herring. It is important to note that unsaturated fatty acids are essential but should be consumed in a controlled manner. A small summary. Liquid oil at room temperature is unsaturated fat. Usually it will come from plants, but not always, and it is called oil. Bad saturated fat. The main difference between different fatty acids lies in the fat molecule and the degree of hydrogen saturation that molecule contains. The more saturated the fat molecule is with hydrogen, the more solid it will be at higher temperatures. A fat molecule that melts at high temperatures essentially remains solid in the body, accumulates and causes damage to internal organs, diseases, and eventually can also cause death. When foods high in saturated fat are consumed regularly, those solid fats accumulate in the walls of blood vessels and eventually clog them. In a situation where arteries that carry blood to the heart are blocked, this may lead to a heart attack. In the event that blood vessels that carry blood to the brain become blocked, the result may be fatal. Among the other consequences of consistent consumption of saturated fat are obesity, an increase in the level of bad cholesterol in the body, heart disease, and fatigue. It is recommended to avoid foods such as butter, cream, hamburger, yellow cheese, palm oil, and sausages, as they are high in saturated fat. A small summary solid oil at room temperature is saturated fat. Usually it will come from animals, but not always, and it is called fat. The ugly trans fat. Trans fat is a fat that comes from the plant to which hydrogen molecules are added in a chemical process to turn it into a solid fat. The food industry likes to use it because it is cheap compared to other fats and has a longer shelf life. And of course, we'll go back a bit in time. When the food industry realized that the public was afraid of saturated fat, animal fat, it came up with an ingenious startup. It played with the molecular structure of the vegetable oil, which was liquid, and turned it into a solid. Well, this is how margarine was born. In fact, this genius invention is called trans fat, and it has undergone a transformation. Nevertheless, the FDA, the American Food and Drug Administration, decided in 2015 to completely remove trans fat from all food products. The reason for this is that trans fat is as harmful to the body as saturated fat, and even more so. The trans fat molecule is similar to the saturated fat, and its melting temperature is high. In addition, since trans fat is produced by a chemical and unnatural process, the body is unable to break down its molecules effectively. The result is an accumulation of fat in the body, even at higher levels than saturated fat. Think of it this way. When we ate the margarine with a combination of other food, the margarine arrived in the body together with the rest of the nutritional components that are absorbed in the body's transport system. The blood, no cell, no tissue, did not know what to do with it, and therefore they are not ready to accept or absorb it. After all, this is not a substance that exists in nature. It is something new and unfamiliar, alien. She didn't even pass the selection of the systems responsible for removing the waste from the body. They were also not ready to accept her and turn her away. So she just got stuck there, in the vascular system, and stayed there, forever. Trans fat can be found in industrial baked goods such as croissants, borax, and waffles. Also, and of course, in margarine and fried foods like chips. To know how to identify if there is trans fat in a food, it is important to read the label containing the nutritional values of that product. Trans fat will be marked on the label, but sometimes trans fat will be defined as hydrogenated fat or partially hydrogenated fat. A small summary. So the trans fat is a fat that will slowly kill us, even if we can have 1 or 2 grams every day. You and every human being should avoid it. Cholesterol is a fatty organic compound found in the cell membrane of all mammals. Cholesterol is very important in various production processes in the body. Cholesterol in the body comes from two sources. Endogenous cholesterol produced in the body in the liver cells, which is usually the majority of the body's cholesterol, depends on the diet, details below. Exogenous cholesterol that comes from the food we consume. We tend to think that what causes all diseases is a high amount of cholesterol that we get from the food we consume, but this is not accurate. Our liver produces cholesterol anyway, and when we consume more cholesterol from food, the liver produces less cholesterol. Of course, this does not mean that cholesterol can be consumed without limitation. What is more important is the amount of cholesterol transporters, carriers, in the bloodstream, HDL and LDL, which we will discuss later. The roles of cholesterol: 1. Creation of steroid hormones such as testosterone and estrogen. 2. Contributes to the formation of a membrane that envelops the nerve channels that pass through the body, the myelin membrane. 3. Enables the functioning of certain parts of the body, including normal cellular function. 4. Importance in the creation of bile fluids and certain vitamins, such as vitamin A. Good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Many of you must have heard of these nicknames from your parents, friends, TV, doctors, etc. But in fact, these are not types of cholesterol. These are types of lipoproteins, types of protein, and they are built from a core of fats and cholesterol surrounded by a shell. These are actually the transporters, carriers, of cholesterol itself in the bloodstream. It is important to note that there are other carriers for cholesterol in the body, but we will not elaborate on them in this course.